What's good, everyone? It's your boy Natsu with another video for the channel. Welcome back to the MV Sports Zone. And today, I got two special guests. I mean, you guys have seen them in the past on the channel, and you know they bring great insight every single night they show up on the channel. And that is Ghiman from the Juice Alert and Rico from Street Scores. And before getting to any sort of questions on the Washington football team or any sports-related topics in general, as I'd like to start off every single stream, you guys introduce yourselves to the channel and all the good people out there who are watching who haven't already subscribed to your channels or haven't looked up your content yet.
I guess I'll go first. Hello, everyone. My name is Ghiman McKinney. I've been on the show in the past. I would say probably almost over a year ago I was on the show. So thank you for having me on once again. My channel is called The Juice Alert. You can find it on YouTube as well as podcasting platforms. I pretty much talk about the NFL and college football. It's mainly a football channel, but I do talk about basketball. I do talk about baseball from time to time, which pretty much whatever sports topics are hot, I pretty much try to cover, But if you're looking for great NFL content, I got you covered. Like I said, you can find it on YouTube and podcasting platforms. Started the channel about roughly 2.5 years ago, and by the end of this year, I'm trying to get to at least 6,000 subscribers. So if you can subscribe to my channel on YouTube, that'd be great. So yeah, looking forward to a great show. You can follow me on YouTube. I'm sorry, you can follow me on Instagram, Ghiman_McKinney, GHIMAN_MCKINNEY, and also on Twitter at Ghiman McKinney, GHIMAN. And then MCKINNEY. A lot of people refer to me as Juice just because I'm from the Juice Alert, but Ghiman is my real name. A lot of people get it messed up just because of the way it's spelled, but that's my name officially, and looking forward to a great show.
Yes, sir.
Rico.
Yes, sir. I'm Rico, Street Scores, diehard Burgundy and Gold fan from Atlanta. You can find me on YouTube, Street Scores. You can find me on Twitter, Street Scores ATL, covering everything Burgundy and Gold. My favorite part of the whole sport is like the GM side of it, film sessions, team building, just even recruitment from high school to college to the NFL. Even if they never go to my Georgia, even if they never play for my Burgundy and Gold, I just like to keep track of certain guys. So that's just my favorite part. Team building, X's and O's. I'm more excited about this part of football even than Sundays. I'm not gonna lie. I love the possibilities. You do this and that, or you can do this in different scenarios. This is when I'm most excited.
And I wanted to clarify something real quick. I know this is mainly a show where you talk about DC sports, Washington football team. I'm not a Washington football team fan, but some people think I am a Washington football team fan just because I gave them a lot of love last year. I did predict them to go 7-9. They ended up going 7-9, going to the playoffs. I am a Green Bay Packers fan, so go Pack go. We'll see how that game plays out this year, but I do try to be pretty unbiased on this channel. A lot of people don't really recognize me as a Packers fan just because I pretty much keep it above 50. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out. If you guys thought I was a Washington football team fan, nah, not really, but I do like rooting for Washington from time to time. You know what I'm saying?
For sure. And who knows? You might become one after your quarterback right now becomes a future Washington football team player. We'll see about that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, you guys consistently day in and day out put out great content on your channels, on all your platforms, really. And I appreciate once again you guys taking the time out of your evenings to join me tonight on the MV Sports Zone. And with that being said, I see that a couple people in the chat. Thank you guys for joining. I mean, I didn't really save too much time to talk about them in the notes, but Nationals are something else. Gave up 10 runs again to the Diamondbacks, 9 runs off of Patrick Corbin, a guy who many people thought was an ace, right? Just a couple years back, not looking so bright, so nice to start the season. But outside of baseball, let's get to the NFL. That's what we love talking about. That's what we make a bunch of content on pretty much. And first and foremost, I know there's still moves trickling in before the draft that happens actually 2 weeks from tonight. But I want to get your thoughts on the winners of the NFL offseason thus far, and in terms of free agency, all the moves that have been made across the league. Who do you guys think are the winners of the NFL free agency period? And we'll start with Ghiman on this one.
Well, I do like what Washington has done. So they be sort of, a team that's mentioned, but may not necessarily be the winners of free agency. Personally, I know people are going to hate what I have to say, but I like what the Giants did. And I do like what the Cardinals also did. I'd probably say Arizona's won the offseason just because they're in such a competitive division. You know, you got Seattle, you got San Francisco, you got the Rams.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at those teams, those three teams legitimately could be competing for a Super Bowl championship this upcoming year. So Arizona, they got to take big swings in that division. You know, I'm a big Kyler Murray fan, so I'm happy that they're getting him some weapons, you know, to throw to. Obviously, they added DeAndre Hopkins last year, but I do think that A.J. Green is going to be a big addition to that team. I do like the Ronnie Hudson move where you point out the Georgia. Let's see. Yeah. But I do like the Ronnie Hudson move. They've sort of neglected to address the offensive line over the past couple of years, but I mean, you know, that's a solid move. And I would say getting J.J. Watt, that's going to be huge for that defense. You know, when you're in a division with Matthew Stafford and Russ Wilson, you got to be able to hit the quarterback. And I think that J.J. Watt is going to wreak havoc on that defensive line with Chandler Jones. That's one of the best pass rushing duos in the entire NFL. People forget that Chandler Jones, he got hurt last year, and Arizona was nearly a playoff team. So I think Arizona is really underrated. They made some great moves. And I also do like what the Giants did this offseason, getting Kenny Golladay. You know, everyone wants to make excuses for Daniel Jones. I understand to a certain degree just because he really hasn't had the weapons, you know, that some other quarterbacks have had. But really there's no excuse for Daniel Jones now because he's got really good weapons to throw to now. You got Kenny Golladay. They might draft someone like Jalen Waddle. And I also like Adoree Jackson. You know, he was a really underrated defensive back in Tennessee. And now you pair him with James Bradbury and already a pretty good secondary. You know, Jabril Peppers is a pretty good player as well. I like those two moves for the Giants. The Giants didn't necessarily go out there and make a ton of moves. Those are two key moves that I really think is going to help them this year. And they potentially could be a playoff team this year if things bounce their way and if Daniel Jones really proves himself this year. So for me, my two biggest winners are the Cardinals and the Giants. And also, the Giants didn't have a whole lot of cap space. So the fact that they were able to make those moves really speaks to the job that Dave Gettleman is doing. I don't always agree with the decisions that Dave Gettleman has made, but he's really a pretty decent team, and we'll see what he does in the draft. But, yeah, the Cardinals and Giants are my two biggest winners.
Yeah, dishing out all that money at Leonard Williams, $63 million over 3 years. Might not have been the best of moves, but no, I agree. Giants had a great
Well, Dave Gettleman loves his defensive linemen. You know, he loves them hog collies. You know, he's all about building through the defensive line and building through the offensive line. So we'll see what Leonard Williams does. You know, was he probably overpaid? Yeah, probably. But, I mean, if you lose him, that's a big blow to that defense. So they're just trying to keep him around. We'll see what he does. But the Giants, I think they're going to be right in the mix of things in the NFC East division. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. I was just worried, like, as a Giants fan, like, you know, the idea of players, you know, outperforming in their contract years. And then once they get the big contract, because last year, 12.5 sacks from Leonard Williams, but in the years past, right, 5, 6 sacks max. So we'll see if he outperforms his contract or actually lives up to it. But Rico, I want to get your thoughts as well.
Well, I mean, the obvious one is kind of the Patriots, but at the same time, the on the other side of that is that I felt like they spent a little too much on certain guys. Like Nelson Aguilar finally looked like something when he went to the Raiders, and they paid him as if he's been doing that the past 3 years, and like they expect him to do that going forward. So I had a slight problem with that. And then, of course, they took all of the best tight ends, so I was a little upset at that. And so it's like they kind of won free agency because they spent the most money, but it's not necessarily if production per value. I don't think they were even top 5 in my opinion. But like just overall, they brought in a lot of talent. They're going to try to see what they can do with Cam Newton. If they choose to get a quarterback that they can groom behind Cam Newton, there's a lot of weapons there for him. And then I also agreed. I feel like the Cardinals, even before J.J. Watt, just the talent they were putting together, and like Drew said, with Chandler Jones coming back, you can't double team either one of them. You have to worry about both. I feel like the Cardinals are another sleeper. In my opinion, I feel like the Giants are a wild card. If everybody stays healthy, great free agency. If everybody doesn't stay healthy, it's going to be very ugly. And of course, you can say that about everybody's free agency, but Kenny Golladay and Adoree Jackson are injury-riddled players. But I feel like their free agency has a very high ceiling. To me, and I've gotten some flack from it on my channel, I feel like if you take the 4 outside corners that us and the Giants have, I would say William Jackson's number 1. If healthy, I have it's between Adoree Jackson and James Bradbury 2 and 3. I will have Kendall Fuller 4th. I love Kendall Fuller. I feel like he's more of a slot guy. If we're talking about just pure outside lockdown corners, I think I have William Jackson number 1, Kendall Fuller 4th. So that's going to be a very interesting secondary to keep track of. Again, I've been high on Adoree Jackson since he came out of USC. just got to stay healthy. I'm happy for him to get that contract, but I think it's a lot for an injury-riddled player. And then, of course, just us. I love that we went for value. We signed guys for a little bit cheaper than I thought we would get them for. I feel like William Jackson is extremely underrated. He's my favorite signing by far in the offseason. I think Curtis Samuel is going to be great as well. But William Jackson just being a potential top 5 man, press man corner with this pass rush where quarterbacks will have less than 3 seconds to pass the ball every play. I feel like he's going to have a chance to get some turnovers out there a lot, because I think he only had like 3 interceptions in before he signed with us, or I think 3 interceptions total last year or just his entire career. But there's a reason when people don't throw at you. His 2017 season, like I did my film session on, he was one-on-one covering Antonio Brown, and Antonio Brown couldn't get open. And that was the MVP level season, Antonio Brown. So if we can get him back to that, I feel like one of the main reasons he's kind of had a slip off from that is because the defensive line hasn't been as great for Cincinnati. So he's been having to cover longer, which allows him to get beat more often. I feel like here, one of the best D lines you could play behind in the NFL. I think he's gonna be great. I think he's gonna play at a Pro Bowl level, arguably All Pro.
Yeah, I agree. I think the potential is all there for William Jackson, and I mean he's playing against or playing for one of the best defenses already. Without him and with the defensive line that we have, I think he's gonna really surge this year for Washington. I will say though. So you're saying that William Jackson, out of all the cornerbacks, the 2 teams, the Giants and the Washington football team, I think William Jackson would be better than James Bradbury off the amazing year that he had with New York?
Yes. I'm after watching William Jackson shut down Antonio Brown, T.Y. Hilton, I'm a huge fan. And I love James Bradbury, but I just haven't seen him shut down, best receiver in the league, Antonio Brown yet. So now we're going off of what they've done most recently. James Bradbury definitely had a better season last year than William Jackson had last year. But if we're talking about at their best, like if we're just looking at just like the best football they've done, I have William Jackson slightly higher. But yeah, like I said, I'm William Jackson, the Giants corners, whichever order you want to put them in when healthy. Kendall Fuller's 4th to me. And I've been getting people think Kendall Fuller's the 2nd best. I have him 4th out of the 4.
I will say, I'm from Ohio. I live in Ohio currently, so I get a lot of Bengals and Browns games. William Jackson is definitely very underrated. He doesn't get a whole lot of press because he played in Cincinnati. Cincinnati is not on national TV a whole lot. They're moving in the right direction with Joe Burrow and whatnot. But, yeah, a lot of people don't know about William Jackson. He definitely was a great addition to Washington's defense, and he definitely is really going to be key for that team next year. So I like that signing. He's definitely underrated.
Yeah. In terms of the winners of free agency, in my opinion, I mean, you got to put Washington up there, right? Like Rico said, so many value picks, so many value pickups in free agency. We got William Jackson, we got Curtis Samuel, Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, you could even talk about the Sammis Reyes pickup that we had for this week. I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that, but I'm excited obviously, about him. Yeah, I mean, he has all the athletic tools that you want at the tight end position. We sort of kind of did the same thing last year, right, with Logan Thomas, just took a flyer, and he ultimately, outproduced, right, his contract and all that. So maybe you could do something like that with Reyes and maybe have him be that tight end too for us. But even guys like that, that just shows you how good of an offseason that Washington had. And usually when we talk about outstanding off seasons for Washington, it's them just dishing out money, right, like at big name guys. And, we've seen that in the past, and a lot of the times they've been older guys, but this year, throwing some good money at some good quality young players that I think will ultimately thrive on our defense and on our offense this year. I will say, though, the Giants are also another team that I had here as my top 3 winners. Got Kenny Golladay. I know you gave up big money to Leonard Williams, but he's still a very good defensive end in this league. Rory Jackson as well, very good cornerback who might get beat sometimes, but still pretty solid, has the speed, has all the athletic tools that you want at the cornerback position. And then another team that you guys haven't mentioned, but is a team that plays in Ohio, and that is the Cleveland Browns, man. Cleveland Browns, even this week, they got Jadeveon Clowney. I know Clowney isn't what a lot of people thought he would be coming into the NFL, but he's still a solid run stopper at the very least. And the Browns, dished out a 1-year contract at him, and I think he would do very well alongside Myles Garrett in that Browns pass rush. And then they also went after 2 guys from the Rams that I know, Rico, you wanted here in DC, and John Johnson III, Troy Hill, some very solid secondary pieces there in Cleveland to an already stout team. They're getting Odell Beckham Jr. back as well. I know it's not an off-season move, but they look really nice. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on the Browns and their off-season.
Oh yeah, no. The drafts, the Browns are up there. Well, first of all, I've been mad at the Browns for the past 3 years because they keep taking all the good corner safety picks in the draft, all the sleepers and stuff like that, where I forgot who it was, the slid. Was it Greedy Williams, the slid or something like that? And I mean, they just been amassing a great secondary, and then they just topped it off with proven commodities and John Johnson. So I think the Browns are going to be really good this season. They're just going to build on what they did last year.
I think Cleveland right now is the favorite to get to the Super Bowl. I really do. I think they can beat Kansas City. You know, they gave Kansas City a run for their money in the playoffs last year. You know,
they did.
What do you need in order to beat Kansas City? You need a lot of great weapons. You know, they got Odell Beckham, they got Jarvis Landry, Donovan Peoples-Jones, 3 really good tight ends, a great offensive line, 2 really good running backs. You know, Kareem Hunt, he could be a starting running back on multiple teams.
Easily.
He's the backup. And then you got Nick Chubb. And I know people give Baker a lot of flack. I think Baker's really, really good. I know he lost to your Georgia Bulldogs in that Rose Bowl game a couple years back, but Baker Mayfield had a really good year this past year. I'm a big believer in Baker Mayfield, and I think that he's going to really take a big step this year. You know, and really, I mean, he kind of has to because he's got a lot of help around him. And Kevin Stefanski, he's a really good head coach. You got Myles Garrett coming back on that edge. He's arguably a top 3 pass rusher in all football. You pair him with David Clowney and Sheldon Richardson. And like you mentioned, you know, they added to their defense. They added to their secondary. Troy Hill's really good. John Johnson is really good. So I think Cleveland is honestly the team that people should be looking to say, hey, they're gonna potentially win the AFC. I really do believe in them. I don't think Baltimore is quite good enough to win that division just because I don't think the Baltimore Ravens have given Lamar Jackson enough weapons. Sammy Watkins is okay. But they still need.
You don't know what you're going to get at that offense. Yeah, you
don't know what you're going to get. He can never stay healthy. So I think that Baltimore's a playoff team, but not quite a Super Bowl contender. Pittsburgh, they're a very talented team, but Ben Roethlisberger is getting older. I have some questions about their offensive line. They don't really have a run game. And Cincinnati's a good up and rising team, but they're not ready yet to compete. So Cleveland should win that division. And I bet money right now that Cleveland comes out of the AFC. Okay, they're really.
As far as Baker Mayfield, I mean, he had this just meteoric rise when he first got drafted. He was just, I mean, he caught the scene by storm. But then we saw like a slight decline afterwards. And I feel like with bringing in like a Kevin Stefanski, making the offense a little bit more simple for him. He's not, I wouldn't say he's a game manager, but he's not as much of a gunslinger as he was the previous seasons. And it seems like they let him take a step back, manage the offense, and then as the weeks went on, they gave him more on his plate, and I feel like he's only going to get better and better from here. He was struggling. They said, hey, let's take a step back. Let's make it a little bit more simple for you, and then he rose to the occasion.
Kevin Stefanski knows his personnel. He knows what Baker can and can't do, so I think that's really good for Baker. And, you know, Baker, he just has to take care of the football, and when they need him to score points, just go out there and sling the ball down the field. They have all the weapons in the world to do so. So I'm really expecting big things from the Browns this year. I think they have a top 3 roster in all football right now. I would say that Tampa Bay has the best roster. Kansas City's probably next. Then I honestly put Cleveland there. I really would. Cleveland, they're loaded. They're really good.
That's fair. That's completely fair. I do worry about the OBJ fit though, because last time we saw OBJ healthy in the Cleveland Browns uniform, I mean, they weren't really using him right. And I do worry a little bit about that because they are dishing out big money at him. I know very early in the offseason, before we picked up Curtis Samuel, there was talks about Washington or some other wide receiver needy teams potentially trading for him. So I do worry about that fit. I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that as well with the Cleveland Browns since we're on the topic. I do want to first shout out, though, everybody in the chat, Maria, Burgundy and Gold for Life, Justin Coffee, shout out Rico, Brandon Williams, everybody in the chat. I appreciate the support. AM Hunter as well. Look at this Bears fan, man. He compared Baker Mayfield to Mitchell Trubisky. Oh my gosh. Okay. But yeah, any thoughts on the OBJ fit in Cleveland?
I will say that I think that they should at least, listen to trade offers because Cleveland has enough weapons to compete for a Super Bowl. What their problem last year was their secondary and their defense. So I think that if they can maybe trade Odell Beckham Jr. to the Patriots, and maybe get a linebacker, maybe get a defensive back, that'd be great. I actually, on my channel, several weeks ago, threw out the scenario that the Baltimore Ravens should trade for Julio Jones and the Cleveland Browns should trade away Odell Beckham Jr. to the Patriots. Well, maybe I should say the Patriots should be going after OBJ, but you get the point. I mean, I think that Lamar Jackson needs a legitimate weapon by his side, and I don't think a lot of wide receivers are going to want to come to Baltimore just because they're going to be asked to run block a lot, and they're not going to get a whole lot of targets. So,
so that would Juju.
Why not try to go to Julio Jones? He'd be perfect for that offense. And I don't think Baltimore is good enough to compete just because you saw in that Buffalo Bills game, those wide receivers were not getting open. And but he's not quite Aaron Rodgers. He's not quite, Patrick Mahomes or even Russell Wilson, where he's this precision passer where he can elevate these below average guys. He needs a good target. So I think that if Baltimore is smart, they'll try to go get Julio Jones. And I think that New England, even though they've spent some money on Kendrick Bourne, they went out and got Nelson Aguilar, they still need a true number one wide receiver, especially with Julian Edelman retiring. I think that they should really just go out and get Odell Beckham Jr. If you put Odell Beckham Jr. in that offense with Hunter Henry, with Jonnu Smith, a solid run game, a really good offensive line, and Cam Newton learning that playbook for a second straight year and really having a prove-it year, I think the Patriots could be a playoff team.
I've seen Cam Newton and OBJ work out in off seasons before too. So I mean, it maybe Cam Newton's on the other side asking, hey, take a look at OBJ.
And I really don't think Odell Beckham Jr. is a diva. Everyone says, "Oh, Odell Beckham Jr. You can't trade for him. He's this diva wide receiver." I challenge anyone to talk about that because I don't think that narrative is true. I don't think Odell Beckham Jr. is a diva wide receiver. I think that he has really proven to be a really good teammate in Cleveland, and he just got frustrated in New York because, well, Eli Manning wasn't very good and the team wasn't winning. So, I mean, Eli Manning, you're a Hall of Famer, but you were pretty washed with Odell Beckham Jr. At the later part with the Giants. So, but yeah, I think that the Patriots should look to trade for Odell Beckham Jr. if they can. That's a perfect fit. Or my Packers. If we can get him, that'd be great.
Yeah, Packers, man. All this talk. Oh, they're gonna make a move. They're gonna surround Aaron Rodgers with some talent, right? Like everybody even thought that this offseason, but I don't know, man. It feels like they're kind of wasting Aaron Rodgers' prime. I don't know. So I did talk about this at the beginning of the stream, but the NFL draft is 2 weeks away from tonight, and I was wondering what are you guys' thoughts on the draft being 2 weeks away? You guys super excited, and do you think we're in for any sort of trade surprises potentially leading up to the big event, or maybe even on the first night of the draft on that Thursday? What are you guys' thoughts on the draft as a whole?
I guess I'll go first. Oh,
yeah,
you want
to go ahead.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty obvious that Washington needs a franchise quarterback. I do like the Ryan Fitzpatrick signing. I believe he provides stability for the team, but he's not the long-term answer. And I quite frankly don't trust him for a full 17-game season. So I think Washington needs to go out there and trade it for a quarterback. There are three teams, in my opinion, and I'll be talking about this on my channel pretty soon as well, that there are three teams, in my opinion, right now that need to be trying to trade for quarterbacks. It's Minnesota, it's Chicago, and it's Washington. I think Washington, with that defense, you got Curtis Samuel now to complement Terry McLaurin. Logan Thomas is a solid tight end. The offensive line is actually underrated. You got Antonio Gibson. Washington has some pieces. And I really, truly do believe that if Washington right now had a top 10 quarterback, they'd be in the Super Bowl conversation. So they need a long-term franchise quarterback. They've been dying for that guy. They thought it was RG3. They thought it was Haskins. Hasn't worked out for those guys. So I think that they need to go out and try to trade it for someone. I think that if Mac Jones, I doubt he falls to them, but if Mac Jones is there, Washington should not pass on him. I'm not as high on Mac Jones as someone to say he should be going number 3 overall to San Francisco. And who knows? There's a lot of smoke screens. He could go number 3. He could drop in the draft. I personally don't think he's going to get past the Patriots. So unfortunately for Washington, you'll probably have to trade up for a guy like that. But if you can trade it for a franchise quarterback, then it's worth it. As long as you just get a legitimate, solid franchise quarterback, that's fine. I do like Trey Lance a lot too. I believe he's my number 3 quarterback in this class. I have Trevor Lawrence number 1, Justin Fields number 2, Trey Lance number 3. Trey Lance is not ready to start right away. Okay, he's not. Do not start him week 1 next year because he's not ready. He's only 20 years old. He really is a raw prospect, but he has a lot of talent. He can push the ball down the field. He can run the football as well. So he's got that get out of jail free card, and makes really good decisions. And his offense wasn't really a true NFL offense, but he executed that offense at a very high level. He throws a great deep ball. He has great velocity on his throws. I think he's a great fit for Washington. And if he's developed properly, he can be a great franchise quarterback. So I think that, look, if Mac Jones is there, that'd be a great pick just because I think he's ready to start right now. I don't think his ceiling is super duper high, but he's better than people give him credit for. He's got I would say he has Tom Brady's arm. That's a good enough arm, enough velocity, enough touch, accurate arm. He can control it. He makes good decisions. And he honestly could come in and start right away and actually make an impact and do okay. So, look, if you can get someone like Justin Fields, that'd be great, but I don't think that he's going to be there. So, Trey Lance is a guy, Mac Jones is a guy, and Zach Wilson's probably not going to be there. So, we'll see what happens. But those are some of the pieces that Washington should be looking at. And don't sleep on Kellen Mond either, okay? I'm not the biggest Kellen Mond fan, but if you can spend the second-round pick on Kellen Mond, that's not that bad of a pick because he has a lot of arm talent. He can move around and make plays. He was a 4-year starter in college. If he's developed properly, maybe he turns into something. But you got to take big swings. You can't just keep selling to the fan base, the Ryan Fitzpatricks of the world, the Alex Smiths of the world, because this defense is eventually going to have to get paid. Chase Young is going to need to get paid a lot of money pretty soon in a couple of years. Montez Sweat, same thing there. You got really good defensive tackles, so you're only going to get this defense on the cheap for so long. So if I'm Washington, I'm trading up for a quarterback if they can.
Yeah, and I know Rico, especially at the very beginning of Juice's comments, I know you wholeheartedly agree, and we'll definitely give you the floor on this one. I just want to interject on one thing, though. Where's Zach Wilson on your top 3 list, right? Like, I don't know. Rico knows this, but Zach Wilson, I've been high on him since, early October, late September of last year.
Before the Zach Wilson over Trevor Lawrence talks, you were high on him. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So I think he has all the tools. I know he doesn't have, the greatest of heights and the greatest of builds, but he has the accuracy, in my opinion. He has the arm strength. He has the mobility. He has everything you want out of a quarterback. Where would he rank though in your top quarterbacks for this draft? Because right now people have him going number 2 with the Jets. So,
well, I think rankings are a crapshoot. I really don't think rankings matter because, I actually like all 5 quarterbacks. I really do, And Kellen Mond's my kind of wild card guy, along with Jamie Newman, even though they haven't really shown a whole lot to a point where I'm going to say they're true first-round quarterbacks, But Zach Wilson's pretty good. I do like what he brings to the table. He had a great year at BYU. He really understands, leverage as far as, throwing the ball down the field. And not just throwing in the neighborhood. It's one thing to be in the right neighborhood, but it's another thing to throw to the right house. That's what makes Aaron Rodgers special. That's what makes Patrick Mahomes special is they're going to put the ball in a place where only the wide receiver is going to be able to make a play. And I think that he actually has that quality. My biggest concern with Zach Wilson, however, is he didn't play a whole lot of great competition. And in that Coastal Carolina game, I know he almost came back and won the game, but I wasn't too impressed in that game. But I do think that Zach Wilson has some tools. I don't think he's a generational talent like Trevor Lawrence. I think Justin Fields is actually a generational talent. He runs a 4.440, got a rocket for an arm. And I think that people are really just criticizing Justin Fields a little bit too much. So I would not take Zach Wilson over a guy like Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields. But after Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, it's pretty much, pick your poise. Who do you want? I think Zach Wilson's good, but not quite special. So I think that he could be a really good franchise quarterback, but maybe not in the tier with, the greatest quarterbacks in the NFL. But he could definitely be a solid starter. I do worry about him with the Jets, though, just because there's going to be a lot of expectations with him if he goes to the Jets because let's say Trevor Lawrence goes to Jacksonville. Let's say Mac Jones maybe goes to the 49ers. Justin Fields goes to the Falcons. Those guys are in much better situations than Zach Wilson. And the Jets are going to be saying, why is our guy not producing? Well, he's on the Jets. Justin Fields goes to play with Julio Jones. Mac Jones gets Kyle Shanahan. Even Trevor Lawrence, DJ Chark's really good. Urban Meyer's a good coach. They've got James Robinson. So I really think the Jets honestly should try to draft Justin Fields just because they moved on from Sam Darnold. And if I were grading Sam Darnold versus Zach Wilson from when they were coming out of college, it's pretty much a similar grade. I don't see much of a huge difference between what Sam Darnold was and Zach Wilson. I know that might be a hot take, but people thought that Sam Darnold was going to be the number 1 overall pick. I know he fell to the Jets, but it's just one of those things where you really got to be sure that this guy is going to be better than Sam Darnold, and he's going to be the legit. Okay, so I would draft Justin Fields if I'm number 2, if I'm at the number 2 spot for the Jets. But if they want to go with Zach Wilson, that's fine. It's their guy. That's who they want to develop. But there's a lot of pressure on him. That's all I'm going to say.
Since we're on the topic, Rico, thoughts on the quarterbacks in the draft?
Well, just generally, what I really love about this draft is I feel like all of these guys, including Mac Jones, who I easily have 5th out of the top 5, would be QB1s in other drafts. Especially the Daniel Jones and Haskins draft, I would have Mac Jones as my number 1. So I don't like when people talk about, especially Trey Lance wise.
Forgot about Kyler Murray.
Oh, my fault. Yeah, my fault. I thought, dang, Kyler Murray was that. Well, QB2 then, easily QB2. But yeah, I don't like how people say Trey Lance is considered the 4th best QB in the class, which must mean that he's bad. But he's QB4 in this class, he would probably be QB1 in other classes. So I'm just very high on this class. I feel like if you're going to trade up for a quarterback, do it this year. Because to me, going into last summer, I like these guys more than I like this next class's guys going into this summer. And then it's not as many as that I like. I mean, you never know if a Zach Wilson or Joe Burrow comes out of nowhere, but I'm not that very high on any of the guys coming out next draft yet. I'm a high Trey Lance guy, but I agree. Justin Fields is getting way too much scrutiny. I agree that even though I don't want Mac Jones to our team, because he is ready to start now, but I feel like with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Taylor Heineke, we should get the guy with the higher ceiling that can sit a year, because Trey Lance will come here and wouldn't have to start within a year, maybe even more than that. Maybe, Taylor Heineke is able to stay healthy. Maybe Trey Lance, we don't see him really till 2022, 2023. So I feel like it's the ideal situation for a guy like him here. But at the end of the day, I think Mac Jones's faults are a little overblown. I feel like he's not a good improviser, but he's relatively mobile within the pocket. A lot of people think he's just this statue that can't move at all. And he's definitely the beneficiary of one of the best receiving cores of all time in college. But you still see times where he's throwing it only where they can get it. It's not like he's just Devonta Smith's 20 yards away from everybody all the time. So I definitely think Mac Jones is slightly underrated based on a lot of the criticism that he's been getting lately. But he's definitely not number 3 to the 49ers. I hope they take him, because that will, increase the odds of Justin Fields and Trey Lance making it further. And if they get to within that 7 to 9 range, we may trade up and go get them. But I don't think we'll trade up to number 4 to the Falcons to go get one of those guys.
I will say I completely forgot about Taylor Heineke. He played really well in the playoffs. I think he's going to get a shot. Ron Rivera is going to have that competition open, so we'll see what he does. But if I'm Washington, I'm definitely trying to maybe, at least get a guy, bring in someone like Kellen Mond, bring in maybe a guy like Jamie Newman, just someone to develop, because you never know, what can happen when these guys get NFL coaching. Some coaching in college is not very good, okay? That's just my opinion. So we'll see what happens. I will say we're going to see if Ron Rivera can truly develop a quarterback, because when he took Cam Newton, I mean, it was pretty obvious. It was Cam Newton. I mean, he won the Heisman Trophy, won a national title, and Cam Newton to me was a generational talent when he was coming out. So we're really going to see Ron Rivera be able to develop his guy. Haskins wasn't his guy, so that just didn't really work out, and things like that. So he's going to give that guy every opportunity to really, showcase his skill sets, whether it's Trey Lance, whether it's Mac Jones, or it's Kellen Mond, something like that. So we'll have to see. And if Washington thinks that they can get one of those quarterbacks just standing there, not going to happen. Got to trade up. Not going to happen. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. And as far as Trey Lance, speaking to the Cam Newton, we saw with Ron. I love Ron Rivera as a coach, but Cam Newton carried that team to the Super Bowl. So if anybody understands that they need a generational or a great franchise quarterback to lead his team to a Super Bowl and to win Super Bowls, it has to be Ron Rivera. That receiving core was awful. The offensive line, I feel like, was worse than what we have here currently.
You got to Ron Rivera credit for that defense, though. Definitely.
Yeah,
but
even
one of the
best defenses in that decade, if we're going to be honest. That was a really good defense.
I feel like other than linebacker, though, we have them beat. If we're going defensive line, we have the better defensive line. I feel like potentially we will have the better secondary. I just feel like it was Cam Newton for the most part. It was a great defense, but if anybody understands that we need a franchise quarterback, it's Rivera. Because without Cam Newton, they wouldn't have made it that far. They just would have been a great defense. I mean, maybe they're like the Bears with Rex Grossman. But I mean, ultimately, you know, you run into a Peyton Manning. It's not much you can do. Rex Grossman can't beat Peyton Manning. So I do feel like we definitely are in need of a French. And like Drew said, you don't want to waste this talent. Chase Young is going to ask for big money. Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, I believe even this next offseason is going to be asking for big money. Deron Payne, and then even on the offensive side, Terry McLaurin and all of these guys. Logan Thomas is an unrestricted free agent after this year. And if he plays as well as we think he will, he's going to be asking for relatively high money, probably more money than people expect. So it's time to groom that guy. Please.
And who knows? Jonathan Allen might ask for Leonard Williams type money. So I think it might be best to lock him up, to a long-term deal in very short order, or else, his price will very much skyrocket. Our secondary is pretty much locked down now. So maybe Jonathan Allen might ask for even more money next offseason. So, but I definitely agree.
Quarterbacks on rookie deals give you your best shots at Super Bowls. Once you pay that rookie or the old rookie, the young quarterback on their 4th, 5th year, that big $30-40 million a year deal, it decreases your odds mightily of making it to the Super Bowl and winning.
Yeah. And I think Ron Rivera knows that. Like, I think he knows that Washington is a year behind in terms of like how he sees the quarterback position, right? Like you said, rookie contract quarterback. The most ideal thing would have been for us to have a rookie quarterback last year, right? And have that year of development. And then, as the defense sort of takes off, as we add in some more pieces on that defense and offense, get that quarterback second year. I mean, that would have been the most ideal thing. But obviously we saw how things panned out with Dwayne Haskins and all the quarterbacks here in DC. But on the Mac Jones point, though, I will say, first of all, roll Tide. Second of all, with Mac Jones, yeah, I know, Georgia Bulldog, I get it. But if he falls, yeah.
I mean, you're not Florida, so
that's true. If he falls to 19, I mean, I feel like you got to take him. I just don't think like you said that he will. I think he won't, last past the Patriots. And if Washington wants to get a quarterback in this draft, I think they're gonna have to trade up. And I don't know if Ron Rivera is super comfortable with that right now, because he knows we still have a couple holes on this team, even with the pretty stout roster that we have up until now. So we shall see. I will say though, in terms of the rankings, again, Zach Wilson's my number 2 quarterback. I'm just a huge believer in Zach Wilson. I think he's better than Sam Darnold coming out. I think he has all the tools that you want out of the quarterback position. And I know a lot of people out there think he's like Pat Mahomes light. I'm not like on that bandwagon, but I think he's really, really good. And I think he's the clear-cut number 2. Justin Fields, though, I know you guys have probably heard the rumors and all that, potentially falling in this draft. Do you think it might happen? Do you think, he will be that 3rd quarterback taken potentially to the 49ers, right? Because 49ers definitely taking a quarterback, trading all the way up to 3 and giving up a couple of first-rounders. But, I mean, that's pretty much like the focus, right? The talk around like NFL circles. Who are the 49ers going to pick up with that number 3 pick? Do you think it's going to be Rico's guy, Trey Lance, or do you think potentially Justin Fields, or maybe Mac Jones at number 3 overall?
No, honestly, I think it actually could be Mac Jones, because we're getting to that part of the offseason where some of these rumors, it's one of those where there's smoke, there's fire type of things. Because even the Baker Mayfield draft, when we started hearing he's going to go number 1, people were spazzing. They were like, there's no way he's going number 1 overall. But there were rumors like a couple of weeks before the draft from trustworthy sources. So, and then I believe Chris Sims was one of the guys that like was believing that Mac Jones is going to go 3rd overall. And he's a very close friend to Kyle Shanahan. Like, they just keep in touch just in general in real life. And like, he knows what Kyle Shanahan wants. And even on the side that they're built to win now. If you can just get something better than Jimmy G, you're a Super Bowl contender. So I feel like they'll probably go with the more surefire day 1 guy like a Mac Jones over a Justin Fields and Trey Lance, who may need time. So I can see it. I wouldn't do it if I were them, but I can see a lot of reasons why it probably will happen for him to go number 3, and I really hope he does.
And speaking
he's
of
number 3 overall pick. I mean, I would say he should be the number 2 overall pick, but I think the Jets are locked in with Zach Wilson. Then we'll see what happens there. But if you're the 49ers, I mean, you gotta take big swings. If you select Mac Jones with that 3rd overall pick, that's playing it safe. And honestly, if you're gonna do that, why not keep Jimmy Garoppolo? I know that Mac Jones has more potential than Jimmy G, but it's not like, oh, Mac Jones is a significant upgrade over Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think he's a significant upgrade over Garoppolo. He could be better. You get him on a rookie contract, and he's probably able to stay healthy more than Jimmy G, because that's Jimmy G's biggest, hurdle. Can he stay healthy? But you got to think about it. In Jimmy Garoppolo's first full season with the team, they went to the Super Bowl. And when Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't play, they don't win games. And they've had a lot of talent on that team. So if you're going to trade up, go get Trey Lance. Go get Justin Fields. Do exactly what the Kansas City Chiefs did. They had Alex Smith. They were a playoff team. They won 12 games, I believe, the year that Patrick Mahomes, but the year before Patrick Mahomes got there. But they said, hey, we like Alex Smith. He can win games, but he's not going to be that guy come playoff time that can take us over the top. And I'm sorry, I just don't see Jimmy Garoppolo as that guy. I can name about 20 quarterbacks that are just as good, if not better, than Jimmy Garoppolo. And I'm sorry, but in today's NFL, you're probably not winning the Super Bowl with the 20th best quarterback. I mean, that roster was stacked, and they still did not win that Super Bowl versus the Chiefs because, well, the Chiefs had the better quarterback. So I think it'll be perfect. Draft Justin Fields, draft Trey Lance. They can sit the bench for a year. They can learn that playbook. And I'm telling you, if you put Justin Fields or Trey Lance in that Kyle Shanahan offense with their ability to run the football and throw the ball down the field, they make good decisions too. It's not like they're turning the football over a whole lot. That's a match made in heaven. And honestly, I hope they don't do it because I'm a Packers fan, and it seems like come playoff time we can't beat teams like the 49ers and the Buccaneers and the Seahawks, physical teams like that. But if I'm Kyle Shanahan, if Justin Fields is there, he's my guy. If Trey Lance is there, I'm considering him, And really the wild card in this draft is Atlanta. Is Atlanta going to draft a quarterback, Because here's the thing. It's going to be hard for them to move on from Matt Ryan because Matt Ryan's cap hit is really, really big, okay? A lot of money. If they release him today, it's a huge cap hit on that team. And I do think that if they were to draft a guy like Justin Fields and Matt Ryan goes on a 3-game losing streak, the fans are going to clamor and say, hey, we want Justin Fields. We want Justin Fields.
I'll tell you, boy, it's going to get bad. It's going to I can tell you my friends now, they're going to be highly upset.
So I think that Trey Lance makes the most sense for Atlanta just because you don't have to play him for a year. You can let Matt Ryan come in and do his thing. And once Matt Ryan's contract, starts to die down, then you can at least Trey Lance. I think that Trevor Lawrence makes the most sense for the Jaguars. I would say Justin Fields should go to the Jets or the 49ers. And if Trey Lance is there, the Falcons should take him. And I will say there is potential for a quarterback to slide because if the Falcons, let's say they don't take a quarterback, because it could be possible, there's rumors they could take Kyle Pitts, at that number 4 spot. Arthur Smith may think that he can win with Matt Ryan. And if you think you can win with Matt Ryan, why not surround Matt Ryan with even more weapons, Because, see, Carolina, they got Sam Darnold. The Broncos, even though Drew Lock's not great, I do think they're going to give Drew Lock another year.
I heard rumors that like they were trying to trade for, I believe, Matthew Stafford, but didn't want to include Drew Lock in those in that trade. So they're relatively high on Drew Lock. So I agree, they may give him another year at least.
Yeah. So I mean, once you get past the Falcons, there's a lot of teams that actually don't need quarterbacks. Then you get to the Patriots, and we'll see what happens. I think the Patriots could be the sneaky team to maybe grab a guy like Justin Fields or Trey Lance because if they're sitting right there, look, I do like Cam Newton. I think Cam Newton's past his prime. Yeah. And you're in a division with Josh Allen and Brian Flores and the Miami Dolphins, and the Jets are going to get a star quarterback potentially. You may need your guy. I do like Cam Newton. I do think the Patriots should be trying to build a great team around Cam Newton because I do think Cam Newton still can win you games. But if Justin Fields is long-term, then I think that they got to take him potentially because he'd be too good to pass the ball. Like I said, I think Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence are the 2 generational talents in this draft. And Trey Lance and guys like Zach Wilson and Mac Jones are not too far behind. They're really good as well.
Yeah. I will say, though, I can't fathom the 49ers trading up all the way to number 3, giving up 2 first-rounders in addition to the one from this year in that swap to pick Mac Jones. I just all
logic agrees with you. I'm super with you. It's crazy, but
yeah. I don't know, Rico. Do you think it's inevitable, man? Mac Jones at number 3, or do you think there's an outside chance?
I'm not so sure to say it's inevitable,
Okay.
but I definitely do think it's a better chance than people probably think. I mean, we saw the Bears trade up from 3 to 2 to take Mr. Trubisky. Some teams just get paranoid. Maybe the 49ers heard that maybe the Patriots or somebody were probably going to target Mac Jones if he fails. So maybe they were like, all right, we're going to trade up to number 3 just in case to get him. I don't know. I'm running through scenarios. None of this is concrete, but I can see scenarios where they may end up taking Mac Jones, even though if I'm a 49ers fan, I would not at all.
I think Mac Jones could win them games. I do think that he'd be a slight upgrade over Jimmy G, but like I said, it's playing it safe. And in the NFL, you got to take big swings. And I think that, teams like, the Ravens that moved on from Joe Flacco to take Lamar Jackson, they're rewarded.
And their whole offense around, yeah.
Josh Rosen for Kyler Murray. Big swings.
Yeah, no doubt. That definitely paid off. Josh Rosen's not very good. But I will say several weeks ago, there was reports that John Lynch, the 49ers general manager, did not want Mac Jones, but Kyle Shanahan is high on Mac Jones. So there might be a little bit of a rift between who the coach actually wants to develop and who the GM kind of wants. But I do think San Francisco's well run, and they'll figure it out. And really, it doesn't matter. I mean, it may matter in the long run because, you want to win a Super Bowl. Yeah. And whoever gets picked is going to have pressure to try to win a Super Bowl because that roster's loaded. But I mean, it's kind of hard to see any quarterback failing with the 49ers. I'm not saying playing the quarterback position is easy, but I can't really see a scenario where the quarterback that they pick is going to be a bust. It's pretty much a situation where it's impossible for them to fail, but will they get over the hump? We'll see.
Yeah. Although,
agree.
I mean, if you're going to trade up all the way to 3, you would think that there would be some agreement, right, on the quarterback that they would pick up in the draft. You would think. I don't think the 49ers are that dysfunctional. I don't think they're the Washington football team or Redskins, whatever you want to call them in the 2000s, right, where we just did not have management on the same, wavelength when it came to coaching
recently
staff.
It's 2 years ago when we took
yeah. So, but yeah, man, Mac Jones, number 3 overall. That's going to be a sight to behold in the NFL draft if that happens. But outside the quarterbacks, though, I do want to get to Washington and the fact that they do have the 19th overall pick. And I know Rico and I were talking about this before the stream, but last year, with the draft, it was a little less exciting because we all knew that Washington was going to pick Chase Young, right? They had the number 2 overall pick, so they only had to wait 1 pick. We all knew that was pretty much a foregone conclusion. But this year is where the excitement is really because there's so many options at number 19. We don't know what's going to happen leading up to that. Washington could, trade up. Last year, obviously, they couldn't do that, trade up to 1. That wouldn't really make sense. So what are your guys' thoughts on who Washington is going to pick up at number 19 in the draft? And do you think they could potentially trade up this year?
So, I mean, I hope we trade up. And then, I mean, there's rumors out there that we made, and there's one day that we won't, and there's another day that we may. But again, I mean, with as much as Scott Turner, I think we sent Scott Turner, Martin Mayhew, and somebody else to Trey Lance's pro day. So I think even John Com said that they do love Trey Lance, but do they love him enough to trade up? So that's the problem. But if we stay at 19, I think linebacker is the biggest need, but I can easily see them going tackle, or if one of the really talented receivers lands there, or if for some reason Michael Parsons slides because of the character concerns. Ron Rivera try to go get his Luke Kuechly. I doubt it's going to happen severely, but people are really thinking that he may slide. The people are really afraid. There's some teams that just don't have him on their big board at all. They're just we don't even want to deal with somebody like that. So who knows? You never know.
Yeah, I mean, he's gotten in trouble, right? Off the field. I mean, but it's kind of funny because, with a guy like Mac Jones, a guy like Baker Mayfield, I know they're quarterbacks, right? But they've gotten into trouble off the field and stuff. But they're ending up.
It don't matter.
Yeah. I know we talked about that on Twitter, Rico. But
so we ain't even gonna talk about the quarterback part.
Quarterback part. But yeah, any thoughts, Juice, on who Washington might be looking into at number 19?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Micah Parsons is going to be the guy just because, like you said, the character issues. And Ron Rivera, if you listen to his press conferences and things like that, he talks about character pretty much a lot.
That's a good point.
And I will say, I think a guy that a lot of people are sleeping on, Jeremiah Owuzie, I forget his last name, but he's the Notre Dame linebacker. He's really good. I think that he'd be a great fit for Washington. I think that if they could snag him, that'd be a great pick. I know I probably didn't pronounce his name really well, but I think that people know what I'm talking about. And
we just cheated and say JOK in Burgundy and Gold Nation because a lot of us love him, so we just say JOK and don't even try.
All right, maybe look at JOK. He'd be a great pickup, and also maybe another quarterback, or a safety. I don't know. There's very, very many great safeties to the point where you want to pick them at number 19 overall. But I do think that maybe a guy like J.C. Horn, if he's there, or a guy like Caleb Farley, I think that'd be a great pickup. You still got William Jackson. You did lose Darby. Fuller is still there. So if you get 3 really good defensive backs on this team with that defensive line, that defense is going to be really elite. And you saw in the playoffs, when the defensive line couldn't get home, the secondary didn't hold up versus Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. So you need cover corners in this league today. So I think if Washington is not in a position to get a quarterback, or they don't feel there's a necessary trade to go try to get a quarterback, they're going to try to get a linebacker. And I think that some of the guys that I talked about are guys that they'll look to get.
Yeah, man. I think Owusu Koromoa, number 19, that would be a great fit. I've heard a lot about
Jamin Davis has been rising lately.
That's true.
And I was one of those people. I was kind of late, and I heard all of this excitement about him, so I went and watched him, and I went in a little hesitant. I was like, it can't be this great, but I actually walked away liking him a lot. I definitely think talent-wise, I think Michael Parsons just up here by himself, but I like JOK, Jamin Davis, Zaven Collins, and Jabril Cox is probably a second rounder, but I like all of those guys. I would be very happy to get either one of those guys.
And I believe the clear-cut number 1 safety in this draft is Trevon Moehrig, I believe, from TCU. And from what I've heard, the safety class this year is not looking too good. It's very, very top-heavy. But when I say top-heavy, I mean there's like 1 or 2 guys, and then very sharp drop off. So I mean, if we do go safety number 19, that might be a value play because of the fact that there are not going to be too many great safeties later on in the draft. And that's, still one of our needs, free safety. We do have Landon Collins and obviously Cam Curl, but we don't really know who's going to play free safety this year. So might be a great play there.
Oh, man.
Why did you bring him up?
I was gonna say, you didn't even have to do that, man. That cut deep, man. You didn't even have to.
Yeah.
It's crazy that he made the roster cuts. Like Caleb Brantley got cut, Thaddeus Moss got cut. I'm looking up and down the roster. Trey Apke sitting right there. How? Yeah. I guess special teams. But as far as the safeties in the draft, it is very top heavy. To me, Trevon Merrick, I feel like he's the better overall safety. But for what I feel like we really need, just a center fielder, pure free safety. Don't really ask him to come up in the box much. I prefer Javon Holland more so. Or maybe a project like Hamsan Nasiruddin from Florida State, maybe. But the top 2 are definitely Trevon and Javon. Javon's more of the free safety center fielder, single eye guy. I feel like Trevon is better overall. He can play deep safety. He can come up in the box and make a tackle if you need him to. So either one of those guys, I'd be happy. I'm not sure at 19 because I feel like linebacker, there's better talent and we have a bigger need. Plus, like Malik Hooker and Trey Boston are still options in free agency. If, like, when in doubt, you hit the panic button and get one of those guys to bring him in and compete. So I feel like I prefer to go linebacker at 19, but there are some pretty good safeties.
Yeah, and I think Ron Rivera knows if we don't pick up a solid free safety in the draft, I mean Trey Boston, I think he's going to be an instant signing like after the draft.
Yeah,
I think you already know the connections are there. I mean, we saw Curtis Samuel. We all knew he was going to be a Washington football team player by the end of this offseason. So I think the same with Trey Boston. Corey on the in the chat, 2 words, Zaven Collins. I mean, I know Rico talked about all the linebacker options out there. Zaven Collins, Micah Parsons, Jamin Davis. I think we just need, for the first time in so long, potentially since London Fletcher was here in DC, a linebacker who could cover, man. Like, I'm just tired of seeing our linebackers get beat off of guys like tight ends, right? Who might not be the fastest in the world, but for our linebackers, man, they're Usain Bolt. Like that's literally how it's been over the last couple of years. So even with a guy like Zach Brown, right? Like Zach Brown was one of the few linebackers in previous years where, he had actually solid speed, right? Like at least straight line
speed. He was vertically fast,
exactly,
but not horizontally.
Exactly. And that didn't turn out okay. So I know we have Cole Holcomb back there, but I feel like he's more of a run stopper. I don't know if you have an opinion on that, Rico, but I feel like he's more of a run stopper than a pass coverage type of guy. But Jock, I heard, is very good in pass coverage. So I know he's kind of a tweener in terms of his size, but maybe that might be the pick there at 19. Christian Darrisaw. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Just before we move on to tackle, I wanted to say that like Jabril Cox, I've been wanting him since before he transferred to LSU, and then he went and got a pick 6 his first game. So I was like, oh, he's gone. Like we're not getting him in the late rounds. He just, he put his name on the map. But I think he would be a solid signing in the second round because you're bringing him in for our biggest weakness, coverage linebacker. I wouldn't say he's not built big enough to be a Mike linebacker. He's not the best tackler. But if you just want a guy that can cover, play will linebacker for you, Jabril Cox is definitely your guy.
And then with the offensive lineman, thank you, Juice, for saying this like way earlier in the stream. But our offensive line is actually not bad. A lot of like outside people, not in the DMV don't really, or not Washington football team fans don't really know that. But our offensive line was actually above average last year. Left tackle is probably the only position where, we'd probably need to address in the draft. But at the same time, Cornelius Lucas was actually pretty good last year. So I was wondering if you guys think potentially drafting a tackle at number 19 overall in the draft, maybe a Christian Darrisaw, maybe I believe Rashawn Slater from Northwestern if he falls to number 19, which I think is highly unlikely. But do you think a tackle might be in the cards for Washington 19?
It's possible. I think that Ron Rivera and the team, if they're not able to get a quarterback, they're going to try to get the best player available. And maybe even if, let's say maybe somehow, some way, Devontae Smith is there at number 19. You really going to pass up on that guy? And I've seen Devontae some mock draft. So, we'll see what happens. Maybe a guy like Kadarius Toney. I do actually think Washington has a good wide receiver core. You got Terry. Yeah, Curtis Samuel. People forget that Kelvin Harmon's coming back from injury, and he actually came on at the end of his rookie season and showed some good things. So he'll be ready to go. You got Adam Humphries as well, but you never have enough weapons. That's my take. It's an offensive league. You got to beat teams like Kansas City. You got to beat teams like Tampa Bay that have a lot of great weapons. And hey, if your quarterback's Ryan Fitzpatrick, you might want to double down on the weapons. You know what I'm saying?
That's a good point.
The tackle could be a position that Washington looks to address, but we'll see. I think they're going to go best player available more times than not. And I think that once the first and second round is over, they're really going to try to fill out that roster because we've seen in years past, Washington, when they've had injuries, they don't have a lot of depth behind the starters. So we'll see what happens. But I do think that they'll have a solid draft. The last couple of years, Washington actually has done a good job of drafting players. They really have. So we'll see what happens.
Yep.
I agree that we will more than likely go best player available, especially in the beginning. If we don't trade up for quarterback, we're going best player available. And that's why I'm so happy that we had the free agency that we had. We plugged in needs here and there so that when the draft comes, you go best player available. I've always been a fan of best player available because if you just think about it in a 10-year run, if you draft purely for needs instead of best player available, you're going to have a bunch of average good guys top to bottom rather than you get Chase Youngs. We didn't need edge rusher the most, but we need, Chase Young just changes your team. But there's a lot of good tackles. I just think there's going to be a run at a certain point somewhere in that middle range. I feel like Elijah Vera Tucker, Darrisaw, Slater, all of those guys. Penei Sewell is probably going to go earlier. It depends though. A team like the Bengals may prefer an Elijah Vera Tucker who could play both guard and tackle, whichever one you need. But either way, I feel like somewhere once we get into the early teens, I think there's going to be a run in tackles. But if one slides to us, I believe we may take him, even though Cornelius Lucas is solid. To have Cornelius Lucas as a swing backup tackle, that's the depth that Juice was talking about that we've needed for years now. To have a guy like Cornelius Lucas off the bench, that is great depth. I feel like it's not our biggest need, but if you get a tackle that's better than Cornelius Lucas is your backup, your offensive line is solid.
Yeah. Same wavelength on that Cornelius Lucas swing tackle thing, right? Like the perfect role for him would be that Ty and Secchi type of guy, right?
Yes, I like him better than Ty.
Yeah, I know. And that would be the perfect role for him. Potentially drafting a tackle early in this draft would be great. I will say though, whatever happened to Penei Sewell being a generational left tackle? Like, wasn't that a thing like literally less than a year ago? But I guess, with COVID and him opting out of the season, now all of a sudden it's not a foregone conclusion that he's going number 5 overall to a Bengals team that lost their quarterback for the year because of an injury where the offensive line did not protect him. Make that make sense. I really understand.
I've been talking to some Bengals fans. They're saying, we may take Kyle Pitts. We like Jamar Chase. And I'm like, why? Did you not watch the Super Bowl? I mean, Kansas City has a lot of weapons. The offensive line couldn't block. The difference between the Super Bowl and a big reason why Tampa Bay won the Super Bowl was because they had a top 3 offensive line. People forget that. And listen, if you're going to pass on a guy like Penei Sewell, like Jamar Chase or Kyle Pitts, they've got to be like awesome. Okay?
Dominant. Yeah.
I think Cincinnati has good wide receivers. You got a guy like Auden Tate is your number 3. Tyler Boyd's pretty good. Higgins, I think that he could be a solid number 1 wide receiver. Mm-hmm. I think that you look in a division with Pittsburgh's defensive line, Cleveland's defensive line, Baltimore's defensive line. You got to win in the trenches. And we saw last year, look, everyone that says the Bengals, tried to ruin Joe Burrow, I think they're overreacting a little bit just because we saw Carson Wentz a couple of years ago with an elite offensive line suffer the same injury that Joe Burrow suffered. So there's no guarantee that you're ever going to stay upright in an NFL game just because you're playing the quarterback position. You're going to get hit. So you never know. But I will say the offensive line they gave Joe Burrow last year was not very good. It was arguably the worst in all football. So I think you got to take Penei Sewell or Rashawn Slater. And I think that'd be a great cornerstone for that team. You got to start winning in the trenches. And I think that that'd be great for Cincinnati. People forget that when Andy Dalton and the Bengals were going to the playoffs year in and year out, they had one of the best offensive lines in all of football. So I think Cincinnati needs to get back to that. It's kind of weird. Andy Dalton had a stacked roster around him, but he couldn't get the job done. Meanwhile, you got Joe Burrow, who I think has a chance to be a top 10 quarterback one day. He's already close to that. I think he's special. They're not building around him. So they need to we'll see what happens. I do like Joe Burrow a lot. I do think the team is moving in a decent direction, at least from where they were a year ago where they had no hope and they were winning like 2 games a year. So
yeah, just to play devil's advocate a little bit, I feel like you can win more games with a great receiving core and an average O-line than an average receiving core and a great O-line. But this situation is different than that. Cincinnati Bengals O-line is a drastic situation. And like you said, they have underrated receivers. I mean, I even had Tyler Boyd in fantasy, and he actually pulled through sometimes. That was the only reason I really kept up with him. And I think he's pretty solid there as well. So, logically you want the better receiver like a Kyle Pitts or Jamar Chase, but like if you're team building, you need to make sure you're solid everywhere instead of really good at one thing and bad somewhere else. That's how you win more. They should go offensive line with that 5th pick.
Now, I will say if they're going to take a wide receiver, they should go Devontae Smith. I know Jamar Chase has that LSU connection with Joe Burrow, and he's really good. I do like Jamar Chase, but I know people talk about Devontae Smith and his weight and how he's skinny. He may not be able to hold up for a while. Listen, turn on the tape. That guy's got unbelievable instincts. He gets open. He does not drop passes. He can win 50-50 balls. He can go deep. He's faster than people give him credit for, and he's able to slip away and evade tackles in the open field. I really don't understand why people are so low on Devontae Smith. I think that he should, at worst, be the 2nd wide receiver off the board. At worst. That's my opinion, though.
Y'all, man, as we get closer to the draft, people start overanalyzing. Wait, look at this guy, Dwayne Eskridge. He might be. It just happens. People, the guys that are on top start to fall a little lower as time passes. Like Penei Sewell, Trevor Lawrence, guys like that. It's just over time, people get tired of the same things. And how people manufacture like mock drafts and things like that. They got to make certain guys seem more interesting. They don't want to do the same exact players every time they do a mock draft. So now when they throw in a random name, now they got to hype them up, and then it catches fire and gains momentum. So Devonta Smith falling down draft boards is pretty crazy. Like, I don't know why that's been happening lately.
Yeah, and I saw that with Chris Sims, right? Like with the idea of having Zach Wilson be the number 1 quarterback in the draft. Like, a lot of people did not believe that was the case, right? With Trevor Lawrence up there, but Yeah, man, it should be interesting. I don't know if I'm frozen, guys. If you guys can hear me.
Oh yeah, you were a little bit, but
okay.
we can still hear you. Yeah, you're good.
Okay, all right.
You're good.
Yeah. So just talking about Chris Sims and putting Zach Wilson up there as his number one quarterback. I mean, he's been spot on with quarterbacks in the past. So, but yeah, like you said, a lot of people have these mock drafts. While maybe a little bit less so with Chris Sims because he kind of knows what he's talking about. With other guys, right? Just putting out mock drafts, trying to get a buzz, between the end of free agency and the draft. So I definitely agree with you, Rico, that definitely is at play. Like a lot of people are just getting bored with certain guys in certain teams, right? So
I will say really quickly, the fact that Chris Sims has Kellen Mond ahead of Justin Fields and Trey Lance, that's pretty wild. I mean, I like Kellen Mond more than most people, but that's pretty wild. That's all I'm going to say. And honestly, Kellen Mond could go maybe in the second round, maybe late first round. Maybe Tampa Bay takes him, He can sit behind Tom Brady for a year or two, That may tick off Tom Brady, but, Tampa doesn't need anybody. Why not take a quarterback? Tampa literally is going to be drafting for depth. They don't need another person. They're a stat. So I honestly would take a flyer on a guy like Kellen Mond, but I also could see Kellen Mond going like in the fourth round, Jacob Eason a couple of years ago, actually, this past year, actually. He fell to the fourth round, and I think that Jacob Eason, Georgia Bulldogs, I know. I think is potentially a more talented thrower than Kellen Mond was in college, so you never know. But I don't see the Kellen Mond hype, at least for him to be going ahead of guys like Justin Fields, Trey Lance. I don't see it, but Chris Sims, we'll see what his evaluation.
Yeah. My thing with Chris Sims. I was about to say my thing with Chris Sims, people thought he would be as wrong with like we think with this one with previous ones, he ended up being right. But this one is just like this is the one I'm the most separated. So if he's right about this one with Kellen Mond over Justin Fields and Trey Lance, his word is gospel from now on. I don't care what's going on. I don't care what I feel about quarterbacks. When Chris Sims ranks his quarterbacks after this year, if he's right about this one, I'm changing my draft board to whatever his is. He might as well just go ahead and get a job as like a GM or something. Radio is not good enough. You need to be out here fortune telling because Kellen Mond over Trey Lance and Justin Fields in the order that he has, man.
I will say that whenever Dan Orlovsky and Chris Sims talk about quarterbacks, I tend to listen. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah. Usually it's the backup guys, right? Backup quarterbacks that have the most knowledge on the quarterback position in the NFL, which is kind of crazy. But
holding that clipboard.
Surveying the field, got the earphones, right? Like the headset on, listening to all the everything going on the field and stuff. But I do have two more questions. If we can tie them in the last about 10 minutes of the stream. Before getting to the last and final question that Rico knows, even Juice knows, I love to say it for the end because it is such a big question. I do want to get into actually one NBA topic before the end of the stream because I know Juice, man. I see you on Twitter, bro. I see the KD and the Brooklyn Nets love and even James Harden. Like I see it, bro. I see it. I really do. But I want to ask one simple question. Rico knows I asked this to Ed Oliver when it was that stream a couple months ago, but I'm going to ask the same
I know where you're going.
You. Same question to you. Feel like I know the answer. But right now, fully healthy, obviously, right? Because you can't have a guy with who's injured versus a guy who's fully healthy and say who's better. Fully healthy.
Yeah.
Who is the best player in the world? LeBron James or Kevin Durant?
A couple of years ago, I would say LeBron, but right now it's Kevin Durant, man. Kevin Durant the last couple of years, when he's been on the court, he's a walking bucket, man. There's not a thing Kevin Durant can't do on the court, whether it be his mid-range game. I think that he's arguably the best mid-range jump shooter of all time. Him and Michael Jordan are in that category. I think that Kevin Durant is the most talented scorer of all time. Not saying he's the best scorer.
Yeah, definitely.
I do think that Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant can get hotter, and I do think there's a level of aggression they have that sometimes Kevin Durant doesn't have. But the thing about Kevin Durant is he allows everyone to play within themselves. I think that the thing about LeBron James is he's going to elevate a team, but it has to be through LeBron. Kevin, he's going to allow guys to do their thing, and I think that's a big reason why LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin and rest in peace. Well, not rest in peace, but hopefully LaMarcus Aldridge can get healthy, and with the heart condition he recently retired and whatnot. But it's not the point. I mean, Kevin Durant can fit into any system and just allow guys to do their thing. You know, he doesn't need the ball in his hands to dominate 24/7. He's a great off-ball player, and he's really shown the ability to defend at a high level when healthy. And I think that he's an underrated playmaker as well. And I do think LeBron is still, you know, I've always said LeBron, Durant, 1A and 1B over the past, you know, probably 5 to 7 years. But I think right now, if they're healthy, I got to take Durant, man. I think that in the finals, I mean, it's probably going to be Nets and Lakers. I tend to favor the Nets just because I think they have a lot of offensive firepower, and I do think that it just comes a point in time where I don't think the Lakers can keep up. And I think Brooklyn's actually better defensively than people give them credit for, but we'll see. But, yeah, for right now, I think Kevin Durant is the best player in the world.
Before getting into Mark Riggs' comment, which I think is absolutely spot on if you guys see it in the chat, Rico, have your thoughts changed on who's better in the last, month and a half or so?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, my boy Ant. I mean, no, I'm just joking.
He's really good. He's really good. Rookie of the year.
I love that. I can't. I mean, it went from.
Right?
You say, oh yeah.
Yeah, I love Anthony Edwards. I worry about him though because he plays for the Timberwolves and they can't seem to get anything right. I mean, Kevin Garnett was great for the Timberwolves and he had to leave to win a title. You know, and that was legit.
Yeah,
it wasn't like he had a bunch of help and he wasn't getting it done. You know, he tried his best, but he couldn't win. You know, we'll see.
Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, I mean, just you know, it went from AI to Gilbert to Westbrook, now my boy Ant. And my Ant's probably my favorite of all of them because he's the most Atlanta I've ever seen out of any sports player, and regardless of sport. I mean, because he didn't even know who A-Rod was, and that's as Atlanta as it gets because we just don't care about baseball down here. It's football. Everything else comes far distant second.
Braves are a good team.
Just if you ask people with our skin tone and a certain age down, you're not gonna get no response. And even said he doesn't even watch basketball. If you ask him on a Tuesday afternoon to watch basketball, he's not gonna do it. He only watches it enough for film. We're a football city, and that's it. Everything comes far second. But as far as LeBron and KD, I would say if you could just somehow make LeBron go back to the same age as KD, both 32 years old, I'd say LeBron. But you're saying fully healthy. But I'm just not sure what LeBron is going to look like coming back from his healthy. Because I thought KD after this Achilles injury was not going to look how good he's looked this season. So I'm just not exactly sure what LeBron's going to look like. I want to lean towards LeBron, and I see Mark Riggs' point with like LeBron in the playoffs. But like you said, like KD can be off ball. I mean, it doesn't matter what players you throw on a KD team is just going to work out. It's really tough, man. I'm torn. Like it's one of them questions. I need like a day to really sit down and run through scenarios because it's hard for me to pick. And you know me, I just don't like KD's personality, but I can't deny his talent on the court at all. Like I'm never going to be biased towards anybody because like their personality and things like that. KD is just more versatile. Like LeBron couldn't have done what KD did with the Warriors. I mean, granted, you know, the Warriors were already a stacked team, but KD was the best player on that team. But like Drew said, KD can play off ball. He allowed Curry to do what he wants to do, Clay to do what he wants to do, and then when they needed him, he was able to ball. Whereas LeBron, it goes through LeBron. So like if you wanted to say if LeBron won the Nets right now, I feel like the KD Nets with James Harden and Kyrie would be better than the LeBron Nets with James Harden and Kyrie. That's the only way I can kind of try to make it as specific as possible. Because again, LeBron's older.
I will say though, like if the Nets were to have LeBron instead of Kevin Durant, if they flip places, I think that James Harden will be the scoring guy, you know, and then LeBron would be more the facilitator because James Harden has shown the ability to be that true point guard and whatnot. But really, I want James Harden to score. That's his best thing, you know. He's a great one-on-one player. He can boogie on anyone. He'll give you 35 points a night easily. I mean,
one of the best offensive players of all time. Yep.
Yeah, I think Kevin
Durant him being MVP.
Kevin Durant's the best scorer in the NBA right now, but Harden's not too far behind. I think that at times Harden can actually get a little bit higher than Durant. So it will be a totally way different Nets team if they were to swap places and things like that. So that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, it's really tough, man. I mean, again, for me, it's the age difference. The only reason I'm kind of leaning KD, like if LeBron was 32 like KD, like if we're taking LeBron at 32, I'm taking LeBron. What he did on the Cleveland Cavaliers and everything, I'm taking that LeBron over this KD. But again, I'm not sure if LeBron's going to fully recover off that injury, kind of like how KD did with the Achilles, where I thought he was going to be like maybe 50, 70% of himself, but he's like 90 something. And then the age thing as well.
I don't want to keep you guys on for too much longer than promised. So keep my comments very short on this topic. But like I said, the comment here, Mark Riggs, and you guys know I could go on a tangent on this, but Mark Riggs said, if we're talking most versatile, most skilled players, sure, KD right now. Taking everything with his personality and all that, which I'm in the same boat as Rico, I do not like whatsoever. And his idea of not playing here in DC because I've shown DC all I got, like what? But okay, that's a whole nother thing. It's all about up here and in the playoffs when it counts, right? When KD's not on a super team, a 73-9 Warriors team the year before, or a super team in the Nets right now. When he's not on a super team and he goes up against LeBron James, right? And it's not like, his Cavs teams, obviously everybody loves to talk about how he had Kyrie and Kevin. Kyrie and Kevin Love were injured so much, man, on the Cavs. Like, I don't think a lot of people realize that. Like, for one finals, Kyrie wasn't there at the very end. Also the one at the very beginning, right? 2014, Kyrie was also not there. Kevin Love was also not there. And LeBron James' second best player was Matthew Dellavedova. Took the Warriors 6 games. We all saw what happened with that. But what I'm trying to say is that LeBron James, sure, he's getting up there in age. He's still the reigning champion, right? The Lakers are still the defending champions. And I think when it comes down to it in the playoffs, LeBron James will show everybody who has amnesia about what he is, what he's all about. We'll show everyone once again that he's the best player in the world. And I know Ed and I always go back and forth on this on Twitter, but guys, like, there's so much more than just pure skill in basketball. Like, Kevin Durant requires a super team to win a championship. LeBron James, in my opinion, even at this point in his career, does not require a super team. You can't tell me the Lakers right now, last year as well, are a super team. Sure, he has Anthony Davis, another top 5 player, but KD not only has James Harden, who's a top 5 player, he has Kyrie, who's arguably a top 10 player. He has Joe Harris, who is the starting shooting guard on the team, who is one of the best three-point shooters in the game right now and last year as well on the team. Marcus Aldridge, we all saw what happened today with his early retirement. Prayers out to him, but still Blake Griffin, still some other guys on that bench. Jeff Green, who LeBron knows very much about, DMV sports fans know very much about. It has to be LeBron, man. It has to be. I didn't even bring stats into this or all that because at the end of the day, what matters is what's up here when it comes to the playoffs and winning championships. And I know we're not comparing LeBron to MJ right here, right? Because obviously if we did that, then this argument would be null and void and MJ would be number one. When it comes to LeBron and KD, and LeBron as an off-ball player is very good as well. Like even at this point in his career, I don't really buy that argument as well. I don't know if you guys have anything to say off of that before we get into the last question.
I will say that Ed Oliver doesn't even really like Kevin Durant that much. So the fact that he's saying KD's the best in the world right now, that says a lot. That's how I'm going.
He doesn't like LeBron even more. That
might be true. That might be true. That might be true.
Oh boy, yeah. But
I feel like maybe the best way to word it is LeBron can do the most with the least, and KD can do more with more because again he's just more versatile. But like if it's like a team and LeBron is by far the best player on it, or in another team KD's the best player by far, I'm taking LeBron out of that matchup.
I will say though that if Kevin Durant had that Miami Heat squad, they wouldn't have choked to the Dallas Mavericks. Just saying. They would not have lost by a record margin to the Spurs. That wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. I mean, but LeBron James was what, 22, 23, took his team to the finals, bunch of outcasts on his team, on the Cavs, second best player, Mo Williams, one all-star appearance in his entire NBA career. I don't know, man. I don't know. I get that though. Definitely a black mark on his record.
player, but I mean, if Kevin Durant could win a title in Brooklyn, I know people may not give him the credit that he deserves, but he's going to start cracking that top 10. He has to at least start, because say he wins another Finals MVP. I mean, that's 3 Finals MVPs. That's hard to come by. I mean, it really is. And it's not like Brooklyn was out there dominating teams before Durant got there. I think the fact that players are wanting to play in Brooklyn, it doesn't say that Durant is saying, oh, I'm scared of LeBron, I need help. It says that they're willing to buy in to say, hey, man, if I'm with Durant, I can win a lot. And honestly, the way the media covers LeBron James, if you play with LeBron James, you're never going to get the credit that you deserve. That's kind of why Kyrie Irving decided to bounce, because he didn't think that he got the credit that he deserved. We can debate whether or not it's true or not, but I mean, we know how the media works with LeBron James. It's LeBron James, or he's the savior. It's no one else. And sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not. But I think that it's just one of those things, like I said, where Kevin allows you to be yourself, and LeBron, he's got to dominate the ball, and he's got to do his thing. And I think sometimes that's the reason why he couldn't quite overcome the Spurs or some of these other teams, just because he's kind of a one-man show at times. And one-man show can get you to a finals. It can go to a bunch of finals, but can it ultimately beat a team with a bunch of Hall of Famers? I mean, you got to allow your teammates to do what they got to do. So that's just my take, but, we'll see. The playoffs are going to be great. I mean, the Jazz are really –
finally.
Jamal Murray, though, going out, ACL.
Yeah, the Suns are a really underrated team. I mean, what can the Sixers do? I think the East, the Nets, they probably have that on lock. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, who knows? Maybe Giannis can dominate and the Nets can't stop him. Maybe Joel Embiid dominates. They can't stop him. We'll see. But the playoffs should be great. They should be great. For sure. And then last thing, Cavs, you got to also factor in that their management is terrible as well. And, I mean, we see that without LeBron. It's literally like – two extremes. With LeBron, finals contenders. Without LeBron, one of the worst teams in the NBA year in and year out, and we see that this year as well. So I get that, though. A lot of fair takes from both of you guys and everybody in the chat as well. Mark Riggs, can't forgive what LeBron did in the Cavs Wiz sort of rivalry in the 2000s. I get that as well. But yeah, last question, as promised, as I like to say for every single live stream. What is the future of this Washington football team? What does it look like? Is a potential Super Bowl berth, a couple years down the line in the future for the Washington football team, is, consistent playoff appearances. What does the future of this Washington football team look like? And that's the question. And we'll start with Rico this time.
All right. I feel like if we trade up for quarterback and hit on quarterback, whether it be Trey Lance, Justin Fields, whoever, I feel like we can definitely be Super Bowl contenders next year, not this year. I mean, I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to give us some of the most exciting football we've gotten since probably Pierre Garçon and Deshaun Jackson, or even further back, RG3. It may translate to a lot of wins, may not. But I feel like if we miss out on the opportunity to trade up for one of these, I feel like all 4, maybe even 5 of these guys could be franchise quarterbacks. I think if we don't do that, we'll just be one of those teams that hate to play, but we'll never amass to a Super Bowl ring. I think we'll just be one of those teams, man, I don't feel like going to go play that burgundy and gold. Their defense is crazy. They can run the ball very well, but I just don't see us ever being favorites to win a Super Bowl. That's my big thing about trading up for quarterback. I think we can be a great top-to-bottom team, but I mean, we've seen even just within the past 5 years how much quarterback play has been elevated. It's not the 1980s anymore. You can't just hope to go with an average quarterback and your defense carry you. Yeah, and it's not even just the talent, too. It's the rules, too. Like, the rules favor offense now. So it doesn't matter how great your defense is. If you go against Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, these guys, potentially Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, all of these guys, it's not much you can do. You just need another quarterback that can outduel them, not a defense that can necessarily stop them.
I think the future is pretty bright. I mean, will they win a Super Bowl in the Ron Rivera era? I actually said they were going to from the time it happened, because I felt they were set with Dwayne Haskins. He was going to be the guy, and that didn't I kind of backtracked my prediction. I was really high on Haskins, but it didn't work out. We'll see what he does in Pittsburgh. He has an opportunity to maybe reboot his career there. We'll see what happens. But I think Washington is actually on the rise just because they finally have a good head coach. Ron Rivera is that guy, and playoff berths, Super Bowls, we may never know, but one thing we know is year in and year out, this team is going to compete. And they're no longer in the category with the Jets, the Jaguars, at least we hope, or the Lions, the Texans.
The old Browns.
Yeah, the old Browns.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain teams every year that are going to compete, like the 49ers, the Steelers, the Packers, teams like that, Then you got the bad teams like the Lions, et cetera, et cetera. Washington is going to be a competitive team year in and year out with Ron and the coaching staff. And I think Daniel Snyder has kind of taken a step back, and that's good because when he was in charge of doing a bunch of things, the team was kind of chaotic, But I will say this division is pretty winnable each year. I don't think Dallas has done anything to separate themselves. The Giants, if Daniel Jones really pops, they could separate themselves, but I'm not a big fan in Daniel Jones. I think he'll be just a good, solid quarterback at best for his career. I don't care how many weapons you put around him. He's got to show me that he's that guy. And the Eagles, they're really starting to rebuild, So each year, this division is going to be winnable. And I think if Washington can just really get that franchise quarterback, it doesn't have to be Aaron Rodgers. It doesn't have to be Patrick Mahomes. It just needs to be a solid, stable franchise quarterback that can win big under pressure in the playoffs, that can just be consistent. They have a Super Bowl window because, like I said, Chase Young and that defense, they're really good. And I think Chase Young has a chance to become arguably the best player in all of football one day. I think he really has that potential. He's got that Aaron Donald potential where one day, I honestly think 3 to 4 years from now, we're going to be talking about Chase Young as potentially the best defensive player in all football if he stays healthy. But it's going to be interesting because we're going to see if this organization can not only continue to be consistent and put out a winning product, but can they keep their players around? Will Chase Young want to stay? Will Terry McLaurin want to stay? Will Antonio Gibson want to stay? Whereas in past years, we've seen players go to different teams and avoid Washington, and they look better on other teams, I think a big example is Preston Smith. Couldn't really get the most out of him in Washington. He looks pretty good with the Packers now. So we'll see what happens. I do think that you're in a space where this team is no longer a laughingstock. They're going to put out a competitive product each year. Yeah. But I got to see Ron Rivera and this team develop a quarterback and make the necessary moves to really say that, they're going to win a Super Bowl. So it's definitely possible. I believe in Ron Rivera, but he's going to need to make the necessary moves to get over the hump, and we'll see if it happens. And, if Washington gets a quarterback, they're going to be in the mix. So we'll see what happens. But I do think this team is definitely on the rise, and they're in a much better place than they were, let's say, even like 2 years ago. They're definitely on the rise.
I agree.
Yep, agreed. Don't have really too much more to add. I mean, everybody hears my comments on this question every single week. But again, I think the sky's the limit for this team. The defense is top notch. I mean, Rico and I talked about this extensively. Linebacker is the biggest need on that defense. If we get that short up, that defense will be like not just, one of the top 5 defenses statistically in this league, but literally like a Tampa Bay Buccaneers type of defense that shuts down some of the greatest quarterbacks in this game today. Patrick Mahomes of the world, even the Tom Brady's at 43 years old. Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, all these guys. Like, I think if we get that linebacker position solved, we're going to be really good. We're going to be really good. And then on offense, Rob Fitzpatrick, obviously, I think he's just a one-year rental. We need that long-term solution. Hopefully, we get that guy in the draft this year. If not, potentially through a trade. We don't know what's going on with Sean Watson. I don't know if he's still going to be that Texans quarterback. But if he's still on the market and he gets everything off the field cleared up, then potentially we could still be interested. We'll see. Aaron Rodgers is someone who I think more and more I've sort of thought that maybe Washington might be interested in Aaron Rodgers after this season if the Packers fall short of a Super Bowl once again and potentially lose another NFC Championship game or even lose out before that point. Maybe Aaron Rodgers, tail end of his career with that defense, with the offensive skill group that we'll have. I mean, it's kind of a good fit. Yeah, kind of a good fit. But yeah, so I think the future is very bright for this Washington football team. Very much looking forward to it. On this last point from Mark Riggs with Haskins, I know you were super high on him, Jamon, but I don't know. Outside of a quarter a game and a half, Haskins showed me nothing as a Washington football team quarterback as the foreseeable solution here in DC. So, and maturity side, my gosh, his immaturity. But that we're not even gonna focus on that. Just his on-field play was not very good. So hopefully we can get that future quarterback and we'll be okay here in DC. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this stream. This was a really fun one. We covered all the bases, NFL draft, Washington football team, Packers, every team, the Cleveland Browns, the NBA, best player in the world conversation. Like, I really enjoyed it, guys. Thank you guys so much for joining, taking the time out of your evenings. I know I promised like an hour and 15, but you guys stayed an extra 15 minutes, and I appreciate that. And everybody in the chat, Mark Riggs, Blue JJ, Washington Sideline on the Warpath, everybody who joined tonight, Rockman, everybody, Maria, DC fam, everybody. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Go check out Street Scores, Juice Alert. Already linked their channels in the description, and put out some of the best content on this whole YouTube platform. So make sure you guys go check it out. And yeah, peace. Have a great rest of your weeks and a great weekend.
Thanks for having me.